Hey guys, and welcome to this brand new series called Mack vs. Machine. In this series, I'm going to be playing 100 games against the very fearsome HastyBot. And for those of you who don't know, HastyBot is the strongest bot on the Boogles.io playing platform, which, by the way, you should all absolutely check out if you haven't been there yet. And I'm going to be playing, in each video, one 15-minute game against the bot, and then sort of talking through my thought process as I go along, and then doing a more in-depth analysis after the game, especially focusing on any interesting positions that came up during the game, both on my side as well as the bot side. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get game one underway. Okay, so we're going to be first in game one. One option here is to play Fax, which scores 26 and keeps a really strong lead. But I think it's probably worth it to go ahead and play Axeman. It's 20 more points, which is quite a lot to give up, especially this early in the game. Okay, so we have a decent rack. So the first thing I would look at here if I were trying to find a bingo would be something like over, but I don't believe there's anything here that's gonna play. He did block End Fever through the E as a double-double, which would have been nice. I could play something like Fever here next to Axeman. That's not bad. It gets rid of my F and my V. It scores 30. It does give back possible counterplay along the H column to this triple, which I don't love. And also on the F column, paralleling Fever using this triple underscore. I could also play Fever through this E, which scores a little bit less, also keeps an extra vowel, which I'm not a huge fan of. I think I'm leaning towards probably just playing Fever here at the moment. Yeah, I don't see anything through this A or anything else through this E that looks strong, so I'm going to go ahead and play Fever. And we have unfortunately drawn the Q without a U, which is always difficult to deal with. And there's no H for cough or A that's open for trank or cot. So I don't actually think we can play this Q right now. It's probably not worth exchanging it, though. I think we can score enough points coming down from here to this triple. I could play something like Troop. Obviously, I hate keeping the Q, but it's still 27 points, and I can get bailed out of it if I draw an I, or especially one of the U's. And normally I'm always like, when in doubt, just get rid of the Q, but if you can score 27, I think it's probably fine to hold on to it at least for one more turn to see if you can get rid of it. But there's actually a better play here of Patroon through this A, which is 33. And not only that, it dumps an extra tile, which if you are going to keep the Q is always good, because that just gives you one more chance to pick up a U or an I or whatever you might need to successfully dispose of the Q next turn. So I really like this play. I think it does leave this spot to the triple open for him, but that's a risk I'm willing to take in order to score some more points and get rid of an extra tile. Okay, so he has played Yuck for actually a lot, for 44. And I got a blank, but I'm still stuck with this Q without a good way to get rid of it. And I've also drawn the J on top of that. So the question is here, what can I play to get rid of at least one of the J or the Q, since I definitely don't want to keep both for a long period of time having the blank, which is a tile I want to try to bingo with as soon as possible. I can't really get rid of the Q still, as far as I can tell. As far as the J goes, there's also not a ton of great options. I could play something like Jerry through this R for 17, which is pretty gross. QG is terrible, and I'm giving him this J to work with very easily. I'm almost leaning towards exchanging right now, actually. Probably just down to ER blank, since, especially with an H here, he might not block this all the time, and then I have a decent shot at hitting a triple-triple. It's the type of play that the computer usually hates in this position. The computer would probably want me to play something like Gyre, keeping JQ blank, or Gyred for 20, but that's just not the way I like to play at all. I much prefer trying to go for bingos. And if you keep JQ blank, you're going to be saddled with at least one of those for several turns, and if your opponent bingos, you could really fall behind quickly. So I'm really just not seeing any good way to get rid of the J for more than like maybe 20 points, if that. So with that in mind, I am going to go ahead and exchange 4. Okay, so I don't think we're going to have a triple through the H. This isn't that great a rack that we drew, but we'll certainly be bingoing, I would imagine. I do see mergers, but I don't believe that plays. We could play demerger. That might be best, actually. It's 76. Unless we have... Is remergent good? I don't think so. That would be a nice 9 through the EN. I don't think emergent takes anything in the front, though. There's also Meagrer, M-E-A-G-R-E-R, which also doesn't seem to play. I think demerger is perfectly good here. Okay, this is not a bad draw at all. C, E, S, T, Z are all quite strong. A play that actually stands out here is playing Yuck again, taking a page right out of HastyBot's playbook. It looks really strong. ZEST is an amazing leave. Another option, though, which scores a lot of points, is playing Symes here. It is 53 points. TUZ, though, is pretty mediocre. I also don't like at all putting this S on the bottom row, since that is a bingo lane that's easy to hit and also very high scoring, since it would reach this triple. So it does score a lot of points, but I'm not a big fan of putting the S there if I don't really have to. I'm not seeing a way to score a ton of points. Another option would be something like Zesty, but this is not nearly enough to be better than Yuck. 36 points keeping ZEST is a really, really strong play. I think I'm going to go for that. Okay, so he makes what looks like a pretty good decision to burn the blank there for 80 points with Quasar. And now we have basically an even game. I do have a bingo available here, Azotizes, through the O for 68. And this is likely what I'll end up playing, but given I have such a strong rack, I do want to at least make sure there's no like big 60-point Z play somewhere that would retain an S and actually be potentially better than bingoing. I'm not seeing it, though. Certainly something like Zetas is not enough to justify the IS leave. I don't see anything strong paralleling Quasar here that uses the Z. I have a word of Seiza, S-E-I-Z-A. I don't see a great place to play that either. I do have Zetan, actually, to this end for 50. So that's still an 18-point sacrifice from Azotizes, though, and it also gives back huge plays through this Z, which devalues the overall benefit of that play quite a bit. So I think I probably should just go ahead and bingo here with Azotizes. I'm not seeing anything else that looks better. Okay, so he had a lot of I's, presumably. I see there's still 4 more unseen. And I'm up a bit, not a ton. I'm up 38. But that is enough that I at least want to start thinking about where is he likely to bingo. And clearly the best bingo lane is going to be next to Azotizes over here, making 1 or 2 other words. I do see, though, I have phase available through this Z for quite a lot. That's 42 points. And it's going to be pretty hard to justify not playing that, I think. I mean, my best play that blocks this lane, like even something such as Fake, he could still bingo from this F for a lot. EELU is a pretty scary leave. It's a vowel-heavy pool, 15 vowels, 13 consonants. So I'm not a fan of that. I'm not up nearly enough to justify that kind of sacrifice. And I'm not seeing anything else that really looks reasonable. I guess, I mean, I could do something like FEU, but that feels a little bit extreme at this score to me. I mean, I'd be going up 53, which is a bit. But he still could play something like Haze through the Z I was looking at. He could bingo through this R, or, I mean, it's unlikely for him to bingo with Bonds and ST. There's only one S and one T left. So it actually does make his life very difficult. I just don't feel I'm up quite enough. If I were up another 50 points, I'd almost certainly do it. But at this score, I think I still need the points. Oh, wow. That is a rough draw for him. Not a play I was expecting. Dumping 3 E's and leaving only 1 unseen. So I have to wonder if he likely has that last E then. So my E becomes a little bit more valuable, as it's very likely the last E I'll be seeing this game. So now that especially now that he's taken out this R, I really like to obstruct this lane if I have a good way of doing that. There is, of course, still the potential of him bingoing to this Y, but that's pretty unlikely. And it's a lot more likely he'll bingo here and catch up that way. So one thing I could do is Cuna, which is a nice play for my rack. It scores 24. It does give him back a lane next to it, though, that's just as easy to use. I could play Akela as well. The UN leave is not as strong, and this does get rid of my E, which I don't love. There is still the remote potential for overlap bingos making okay after Aquila, but it's significantly less likely. Ak has the same problem. He'd have to start, I guess he'd have to start a bingo with an N or an S, which is pretty hard for him to do. So this is actually kind of interesting. Or maybe I play Ak here. Because where does he bingo after that? I guess there's still the ST line with Bonds that I have to worry about. Yeah, this is a tough call. I feel like trying to play defense here has to be the right call. I'm also getting a little bit low on time, so I don't want to take too much longer on this play. I could also just try to score with something like Ka here. I mean, there is something to be said for this. I go up 100 points after Ka, so I will outrun vast majority of bingos, whereas something like Ak, especially if he were to bingo through this Y, I might have a harder time. Whereas Ka gives me a decent chance at outrunning a freak bingo through the Y, and I should still be in good shape after most bingos next to Azotizes, I think. Yeah, this is a bit of a tough call here. What I do like about Ak is it really, I mean, it keeps such a solid leave for me for next turn, and it really does cut down quite a lot on his bingo percentage. Whereas Cuna leaves him a very easy lane. NO is not that easy to start a bingo with. But at the same time, it's a lane that's going to actually be very difficult for me to block later, and I'm going to have to worry about him fishing, and I'd rather leave him an easier lane, personally, than have to stress about him fishing for that, and if he has that many turns, it's something he could pretty easily hit. So I generally don't like leaving lanes open that are maybe less easy to hit immediately, but very easy for him to fish for and hit with a couple turns to spare. So I need to make a move here. I think I'm gonna just... I'm still thinking about Cuna. Like, does this help me block the... This doesn't really help me block the lane next turn. I don't think. Although the nice thing is, if he does bingo here, he'll now be giving me big comebacks, right? Because if he bingos next to the AS, he'll be opening the bottom lane, which is kind of nice. So I think I'm actually going to go with this. And he did actually bingo. And my prophecy there at the end did come through, because he's now given me this lane here where I can overlap Jane. And I don't think I actually have anything with JE. I probably just have to play Raj here, is my guess. I should be in pretty good shape. I don't know if he has anything to that Y. Probably not. And I should be able to outrun anything else pretty easily. Yeah, this will definitely be a win for us at this point. He's down to 3 tiles. I just need to watch my time here. But GHI, let's see, is he going out? GHI, I don't actually see an outplay for him. GHI is a word, but I don't think it plays. So I don't need to necessarily go out in 2. I just need to play quickly. I'm sure this will not be the optimal endgame. Yeah, I'm just going to go here. He plays that, and I'm just going to play Mug to avoid going overtime. I know it's not optimal, but I just needed to not flag there. So okay, this was an interesting game for sure. Let's go ahead and examine it and see what we might have missed. So if we go back to the beginning, yeah, Fax is a reasonably strong option, and there are maybe some stronger players who would actually prefer it, but I feel like 20 points is a bit too much to give up. Bollocks looks very solid on his end. Fever looks good. Yeah, this is the other placement of Fever that I was looking at, but I think taking the few extra points here is fine. Bond looks pretty solid. Bench is fine too. CHP is a really strong leave, though. That has great scoring potential, so I can't fault him for this. Yeah, Patroon looks solid in this position. Yuk looks almost forced. Okay, so this is actually somewhat validating. Even the computer is suggesting that I should exchange here. I thought for sure the computer was going to want me to keep JQ or JQ blank, but the fact that the computer even wants me to exchange very much tells me that it's the right call. And Demerger is... Actually, Germier is the only other playable bingo, and it's clearly far worse. So the computer is saying Symes here, which I did look at. Yutz is not a play I actually considered, but it's not one I like. I'm scoring 14 more than Yuck, but I'm putting this Y here, which at the minimum it's very easy for him to just get a cheap 40-point play like Haya there, and it could end up being a lot worse, like Jays. Jays would really hurt. It's also just giving up so much firepower. ESTZ is so strong. I think Yuck is perfectly good here. HastyBot, of course, is correct to burn his blank here. It's sometimes a little bit strange to burn a blank for a non-bingo play, but in this case, he's scoring 80, which is basically the same as what most bingos would score, if not more, and his next best option is just so weak compared to that. So this is a fairly obvious play once you look at the numbers, but it's still any play where you use a blank for a non-bingo can look a little questionable at first, so it's worth reviewing. In this position, Zeton was the other play I considered, but it does look like Azotizes 18 points, and also just the better positional structure, I think, make it worth it here. And then, yeah, rough draw for HastyBot here. He actually would have had Initiate through an A if I had bingoed with Zeton, which would have been kind of crazy. So very fortuitous that I did end up going with Azotizes here, and he's forced to unload a few of his eyes with TD. Phase looks good. Fees, I actually didn't even consider that, but I wouldn't have considered it seriously at all. There's really no reason to dump an extra E here, which are always, or generally good to keep, just to keep your rack more balanced, and also put an F in this lane. Phase is perfectly fine here. Yeah, and this was probably the turn of the game for me that was the most interesting. And there's actually a cool play I missed of Kabbalah that looks strong. And the reason I like this play so much, it's obviously very hard to see, is he can still bingo next to this S, but it's a lot harder, right? Because now he has to start with a vowel. Before, he could have started with a consonant like a D, an R, many things. And yeah, he could still bingo now next to Kabbalah on the B column, but those bingos are going to score very little because they're only going to get to this square down here. They're not going to get all the way to the double word. And not only that, they'll still give back a lot of counterplay for me on the leftmost column here. So that actually looks like a really, really strong play that unfortunately I didn't see during the game. I did see, I think, all of these other candidates. KA I considered quite a bit, but I eventually decided I wanted to at least do something about this column. So I settled on Cuna, which does block this column. Of course, it gives back column B, just like Kabbalah does, but I guess the problem with Cuna compared to Kabbalah is column B bingos will tend to score a lot more, right? Since now if they start at this square, they will reach this double word and potentially score significantly more points than bingos would on column B after Kabbalah when they only go from this square to this square. So a little bit of a subtle difference there, but I think Cuna is not a big mistake, but a bit of a small strategical mistake over Kabbalah. There is also something to be said, though, for Cuna keeping a slightly better leave. AEL, especially if you look at this pool on the right, there's only one A left, a lot of I's, and I's and U's are notoriously bad together, so keeping the U is not great. I think, not this Auk, but the other Auk, which isn't on this list, though. This Auk is... oh, sorry. This Auk right here in the same spot as Cuna would be, so making AE and Us is also a reasonable play to make as well. I just think it's a little bit too much of a point sacrifice in that situation, but I think there's a lot of players out there who would make that play, but my style is more to kind of keep things a little bit more open and try to maybe not fully restrict my opponent from bingoing, but say, okay, if you're going to bingo, then I want you to do so in a way that's going to give me a lot of points back. If there were no other lanes whatsoever, like if this Y didn't exist and if the bonds lane didn't exist, I'd maybe consider more of a play like Auk, but I'd always rather keep the scoring pressure on rather than try to go all in on my opponent not bingoing if there are still potentially viable lanes for my opponent to hit. And of course, I mean, the Y is not easy to hit, but I see plenty of things, just like Idoniady could hit the Y, for instance, and I'm sure there's plenty of others out there if we looked harder, that like Stingray, for instance. There are words out there, and it's the type of thing, too, he can fish for, so continuing to keep the scoring pressure on is, I think, perfectly reasonable. I do believe I would have played Kabbalah if I saw it, though, just because that forces his bingos to score so much less, which is really nice. So I'm going to say this is a small strategical mistake, but nothing major. So he bingos here, and yeah, Raj is pretty clearly the right play. I can't imagine there are any possible bingos through that Y, but even so, I don't think I could afford to block them, since if I block them, I'd be leaving him this huge spot, and he could easily play something there, like Ghoul, Ghoul, for about 45, and I could end up running a risk of getting outrun if I were to play something just like Joy, and then he played Ghoul and got a decent draw in the endgame. Then I could run into some trouble. So I think Raj is perfectly fine, even if there were something to the Y, which again I'll actually just look it up very very quickly here on my phone, but I don't believe there's anything through that Y that he could have had. And there's not. So in this case, Raj is basically 100% winning play. And it's pretty much a formality at this point. Of course, spread could theoretically matter if this series ends in a 50-50 tie. I think it's quite unlikely, but in general, I should still be playing for spread as much as I can. Of course, here I was low on time and missed Egad, which looks like a much stronger play than Oda, which is what I did. And then he dropped the H here, and I looks like I didn't even go out here. I should have just played goalie or goalit, but I'll forgive myself with only 8 seconds on my clock and just needing to basically not flag. I do also at least manage to block Mig by playing here. So although Wig scores more anyway, so I guess that's sort of a moot point, but in any case, I should absolutely go out there if I see it, but I didn't see it, and thankfully, at least, I still won the game by a final score of 460 to 413. So, pretty good game. Not actually that many really difficult decisions. Cuna was probably my most interesting turn of the game, which it looks like Kabbalah would have been a little bit better, but overall, I feel like if you don't count the endgame, which was sort of moot, I played quite solid this game. So happy with the start to the series. Always good to start off with a win, but at the same time, there's 99 games to go, so anything could still happen. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this, and more to come in this series very, very soon. Take care.